Who are you? Who am I? Who are we? Who are you? Think about it for a second. Who do you consider yourself to be? Do you have a different citizenship to what you feel like corresponds to your true identity? Do you have more than one nationality, perhaps? Regardless, it's important that you understand who you are. We are part of so many communities today, whether it's local, on a community level, or on a global level. I myself am part of so many different communities, I can't even understand how I know so many people. And in today's world, it's really important to understand who you are and cherish it, recognize it, develop it. Why am I talking about this? Well, a couple of years ago, I had a friend, and I met a friend, and I was like, oh, where are you from? And he's like, oh, I was born in Poland, I grew up in Ukraine, then I lived in Germany, now I'm living in Prague. I speak Polish, but I also speak English at home, so I'm not really Polish. I'm a peaceful citizen of the world. And I was like, what are you, part of a re-emerging hippie movement? A peaceful citizen of the world? Yes, yes. I was like, we're all peaceful citizens of the world, you know? We're all peaceful citizens of the world, or at least we aspire to be. And it's important that you recognize who you are through a concept that I like to call healthy nationalism. It's important that, you don't become right-wing extremist, but it's also important that we don't aim to politically correctize everything in this modern day of age. It's important for you to hold your flag, to stand up for people, to stand up for your communities. And I hope that through my presentation, maybe you'll understand or grow to understand who you are and cherish it. So I've broken my life up into 6 very important factors that are dear to me. And I'll start from the bottom and build my way to the top. And maybe drawing this diagram at home will help you too. But I'll move through them and explain why keeping your identity and cherishing it is an important thing to do. So I'll start with history and culture. On the map, you can see the Czech Republic and Armenia. Both of them are my homelands. Both of them I consider dear to me. And if you haven't guessed from my surname, I am Armenian. I was born to Armenian parents in Prague. But also, each time I hear, if I'm coming back on a flight to Prague, and I suddenly hear, "Ahoy, let's go, jak se máš?" Something like that, it just really makes me happy when I hear Czech again. And it just happened when I was returning from a conference recently, that even listening to Czech felt like home. But this is my home country, or at least this is where my parents come from, and this is where I originate from. And you'll notice there are 2 pieces. One of them is the Armenian Republic, and the other is the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, which is a second unrecognized Armenian Republic. Sadly, we're in a conflict with Azerbaijan today over that area. But what I want you to notice is the lady that I have inserted onto the slide. The map of Armenia looks like a lady, and that's very important to Armenians, and I'll explain why in a second. So just a couple of important points. Armenia is in Eastern Europe, at least it is culturally, religiously, and historically. The capital is Yerevan. There are 10 million of us, or approximately 10 million, of whom 3 million live in the Republic, and the rest live dispersed all across the world. The official language is Armenian, and the national church is the Armenian Apostolic Church. There are also minorities of Catholics and Protestants, but all of these building blocks are important to Armenians in general. So I'm not going to bore you with history, but to Armenians, the traditional date of 2492 before Christ is the founding of our people. Haik, in Armenian we say Hayastan to Armenia. Haik was the great grandson of Noah, Noah and the Ark and the 40 days. And Haik founded the Armenian nation. And we believe that we are descendants of Haik. You'll notice that Noah landed on Mount Ararat, and this mountain is also really important to us. But what I want to go back to, actually, is an important part in Armenian history, and that's the split. When Armenia was split between the Russian, first Persian, then Russian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. Afterwards, we gained independence very shortly. Then we were sucked up into the Soviet Union when the Red Army invaded, and then now we have one unrecognized, one recognized Armenian Republic. So, why did I talk about the split? Because Armenian culture started to develop into various ways. We have today 2 existing Armenian languages, Western Armenian and Eastern Armenian. I speak Eastern Armenian, but my descendants are from Western Armenia, and I'll explain why. Well, what happened was, because the Armenian people were split into 2 different parts, Western Armenia, which was part of the Ottoman Empire, went through genocide. The Ottoman government, the Young Turk government that took over in the early 20th century, decided that it was going to start a systematic extermination campaign. It already started in the 1890s with the Sultan Hamid II, but it moved on, and the Young Turk government chose to exterminate the Christian Armenians from their ancestral homeland by various means, whether it was drowning, rape, rounding up all the able-bodied men, intelligentsia. I'm not going to go into the details. On the map behind me, you can see basically the death routes that are very similar to what the Holocaust was. But my great-great-grandfather survived the Armenian genocide. He was actually the American orphanage that saved him at the age of 4 or 5, recorded on their transcript that he had blonde hair and blue eyes. Don't know what happened in between, but I'm glad he did survive, because it's the reason why I'm talking to you today. And it's the reason why Armenians hold their history and their culture as a great pillar to themselves. And it's the reason why so many Armenians live today all across the world. And that leads me to talk about the diaspora, why all of us are dispersed all over the world. Well, there were roughly 2 million Armenians in Ottoman Armenia, and over 1.5 million died. Thankfully, there were many European, French helpers, Danish, Swedish missionaries and American missionaries that were in charge of helping the Armenian people, and they saved a couple of 100,000 people. And because of that, today Armenians live all across the world. And that's why you'll find Armenian churches, either Christian relics or something similar in one of your countries, wherever you come from today. In the Czech Republic today, we have 2 cross stones, and a church was recently handed over to the local Armenian community in the center of Prague. So like I said, we live all over the world, and we have helped contribute to local communities as well as the global diaspora. And that's a reason, again, as to why history, culture, and the diaspora are an integral part of my identity. And the last big pillar that I'd like to talk about is the Armenian Church, where the Catholic and the Protestant churches are blamed a lot of the time for misbehavior, high taxation, sexual abuse, anything like that, you name it. The Armenian Apostolic Church, I'm not going to say never, but didn't participate in such acts. It was the center of Armenian spiritual life throughout the Middle Ages and history. It's the only reason why my people survived, to be honest. It was a source of education, it was a source of enlightenment, it was a source of community, family, everything centered around the church. Not because it was necessarily more to do with religiosity or anything, but it was a coming together. It was a sense of community, and it added to everyone's sense of identity as well. This is the first state-built church in the world, and the oldest, and it's the Vatican of Armenia, if you will. And I was baptized in the city that this church is in. So these 3 factors, diaspora, history and culture, and the church, come together to form who I am. They come together to form Armenia and the diaspora, but they also form me in the Czech Republic, as I'm part of the diasporan community in the Czech Republic. Like I said, hearing Czech even, I don't know, I have this different sense of feeling when I hear my mother tongue or when I hear Czech. And it's important for all of us to recognize who we are. What is it that really turns you on? What is it that really gets you thinking? What is it that really, forms a part of you? And of course, my family played a big part in this as well. My mother and I like to call this the vaccine factor. If you don't have self-recognition, if there's no self-preservation, then you won't be able to build international mindedness. And only then can you be able to, cooperate with people. Only then can you be educated into the correct mindset. Only then can, have respect for yourself and respect for others. One of my British friends, when I met her, she said, "Vahe, you're so clearly Armenian. I mean, you are Armenian. I mean, you were born in Prague, so was I. But I'm not British. I was like, British? What do you mean? Bella, you're British. And she's like, yeah, but you're so clearly Armenian. And I was like, well, maybe that has something to do with healthy nationalism. It leads full circle back to what I was talking about. Unless you recognize who you are, unless you cherish that, unless you believe in that, then there's no way that other people are going to respect you for who you are, right? Well, psychologists in Switzerland and the United States have recently found out that there's a lot of depression in the West because people don't know what to live for. Well, identity is something you should live for. You shouldn't throw it aside like it's just another factor of my life. And you shouldn't try to be more politically correct in a plea to not sound radical or extremist. No, you can be just as peaceful as I am, standing here talking to you. Embrace your own culture, your religion or no religion, and still be able to foster international mindedness, which is one of the goals of the school I'm going to now. I had a very tragic incident a couple of years ago when I was at Czech school, and I told you about the conflict with Azerbaijan. Well, there was an Azerbaijani boy who was about 8 years old, and I was 10 or 11 or so. And he came to me and he said, "Vahe, do you know what I'm going to do?" And I went, "No, I don't really care." And he went, "Well, I'm going to grow up, I'm going to go back to my home country in Azerbaijan, I'm going to build up the military, I'm going to gain strength, and I'm going to come and I'm going to murder your family." And at 10 years old, what do you think is rushing through my brain at that moment? That, this 7 or 8 year old child is telling me he's going to murder my family in the future. This is what I'm talking about when I mean healthy and normal nationalism. You don't have to foster your children in the way that unfortunate boy was, nurtured in. You need to believe in yourself, but not to the extent that you want to exterminate other people. And like I said, positive building and positive cooperation is the only way that you can recognize yourself and recognize everyone else. This is me. I've told you. Now it's time to know who you are, because otherwise you'll be the peaceful citizen of the world, but you won't really know who you are. So love it, cherish it, and question yourself sometimes. Thank you.